There is a subtle change happening within Yuji during the Shinjuku arc that I think bears significance and thus mentioning. After awakening, Yuji seems to have lost sight of his original intention of saving Megumi, and is now much more focused on killing Sukuna. There are various times Yuji seems to try and straight up kill Sukuna, regardless of the fact that Megumi is within him, quite apparent in 260, where he very visually tries tearing out Sukuna's heart, or what's left of it, and is animalistically growling at Sukuna, rather than trying to call out to Megumi. What's also interesting is Yuji is connected to Sukuna in sustained fashion in this moment, much like in the Yuta domain expansion. However, it seems as though he hasn't made any attempt to call out to Megumi again, and is far more focused on Sukuna now. What's interesting to me about this is after Choso died and Yuji's resolve was shaken, it was because he couldn't find his friends and believed them to be naught but ash and cinder. But once Sukuna appeared again, he is remarkably quick to become enraged and was returned to his aggressive disposition. The desire to kill Sukuna quite clearly overpowered his concern for his friends, and the concept of the threat of Sukuna seems far removed from this decision. This remains consistent with how Yuji acts from there on out. Sukuna even realizes Yuji, at his maximum concentration, is showing his single-minded absolute focus on killing Sukuna. Such is the level of dogmatic focus that Yuji can land yet another Black Flash. The idea that Megumi is slipping from his mind and being replaced with Sukuna is to me quite thematic and somewhat ironic. Yuji utterly despises Sukuna and his selfish nature, but here we have Yuji beginning to slip into that same selfish nature, from what up to this point had been total opposite, yet exact same mentality, mechanistically speaking. Yuji's own doublethink he has become oblivious to. It furthers the idea that Yuji in functionality is exactly the same as Sukuna, and ties into them being two faces of the same being, Ryoma and Sukuna equaling double-faced Spectre. The fact that Yuji was so easily able to fall into acting like Sukuna from being previously his complete moral opposite shows us Yuji is unable to realize how similar the two are, and his relentless need to kill Sukuna mirrors Sukuna's relentless need to break Yuji, because both are in essence trying to prove they are superior to the other, but in doing so, both agree to the other's worldview. Sukuna, in trying to prove he's superior to Yuji's ideals, gains an ideal. I am superior to ideals is in of itself an ideal, whilst Yuji's absolute need to kill Sukuna embodies Sukuna's belief that only the self matters. Because Yuji isn't thinking, I need to kill Sukuna to save everyone here. The visual anger and animal-like behavior demonstrates a deep-rooted desire to kill Sukuna, which can only be described as selfish in nature. Yuji wants to kill Sukuna out of genuine hate and not out of an altruistic behavior, and that's hinted at pre-Shinjuku and just outright demonstrated post-awakening, all tying into them being the exact same, and thus Yuji going on to inherit the title of Ryoma Sukuna, not only because he may defeat him, but because mentally, physically, and spiritually, Yuji Itadori is Ryoma Sukuna. As of chapter 261, and Yuta's willingness to become a monster, I must remind you, dear viewer, that of all the obscure, strange, and baffling things Kenjaku, the one who gave Yuta the ability to become that monster, made a single statement that has never been more pertinent than in this arc. Kenjaku describes his son Yuji as the Eye of the Storm, with which the new age shall revolve around. The old age, and the last age Kenjaku truly cared about, was the Heian era, and thus, when he speaks of the new age, he is referencing something equivocal or superior to that era, and what closer example could demonstrate that than the Shinjuku raid itself. Mirroring the end of the Heian eras, end with its own beginning. The reason Yuji's Eye of the Storm title is so important is that these monsters that the other students have branded themselves as are supposed to portray failure. They are failures because they are not true monsters. They are not true monsters because they do not understand what being a monster truly entails. Yuta blindly and very foolishly believes that abandoning his humanity and taking over Gojo's body is what makes him a monster and capable of defeating Ryoma and Sukuna. This is Yuta's misunderstanding of Gojo's entire struggle and what is truly necessary to defeat Ryoma and Sukuna. Yuta is showing his inability to grasp the true depth of sacrifice needed to defeat Ryoma and Sukuna, because he thinks that just abandoning his humanity is sufficient. However, that is simply not true, and demonstrated entirely by Gojo and Arame. Gojo, as branded by the students, is a monster that is beyond humanity, and this is what makes him strong, but this title is entirely misinformed on what a true monster is. Arame, in her fight with Hikari, makes it clear that even Hikari had abandoned his humanity, yet is obviously entirely incapable of defeating Sukuna, making it clear that whilst having that humanity does hold you back, it's clearly not enough to achieve Sukuna's level, because even Arame herself cannot grasp the true depths of Sukuna's strength at its source, even after implicitly witnessing it in the past. Sukuna is a monster not because he abandoned his humanity, but because he has altered the purpose of his own existence to that of self-satisfaction. To become the monster Yuta would want to be is not only to forego his humanity, but to dedicate his core existence to achieving one particular goal or ideal, which is highly reminiscent of another character, Yuji Itadori. As previously explained, Yuji seems to be progressing rapidly to the core, selfish ideal of Sukuna's destruction, even at the cost of others. As Yuji progresses toward this, we see a psychological and visual change to Yuji. His face is cut and begins to resemble Sukuna's mask. The blood leaking on his face becomes almost identical to the markings on Sukuna's face, and of course, Yuji begins to wield, cleave, and dismantle Sukuna's curse technique. What makes Yuji a true monster then, and the reason I believe him to be becoming such, is Yuji does not want to be one. He does not choose to be a monster. He is groomed and forced into being such. Much like how Sukuna probably did not choose to be the way he is, he was, like almost every human in history, a product of his environment. Conditions and circumstances made Sukuna into what he is, a monster. What Yuta is doing is artificially trying to inherit those circumstances that made Gojo who he is, and expecting the same results without fundamentally understanding the emotion and experience necessary to interpret those circumstances and convert them into strength. The circumstances are meaningless then to Yuta in terms of becoming a monster. He thinks he is, because Yuta does not comprehend what a monster truly is, and has a complete misinterpretation of strength and its relationship with mentality and sacrifice. Yuji, by contrast, entirely understands what being a monster is, because he completely understands Ryoma and Sukuna and absolutely abhors him. Yuji cannot stand Sukuna's existence and causes a unscratchable itch in his very existence that can only be satisfied with Sukuna's death. Yuji is able to become the monster Yuta wants to be precisely because Yuji does not want to be that monster. He is forced to by circumstance. Yuta tells others that if no one else wants to be the monster, then he will. Yuta fails because he is chasing a fantasy, while Yuji succeeds because he is desperately trying to run from reality, but knows at his core that he must do what need be done. Yuji does not want to become Ryoma and Sukuna, but is obligated by both his own morality and his existential need to destroy Ryoma and Sukuna. It's a metaphorical noose that Yuji does not want to tie, but knows that no one else can, consciously or unconsciously. And that is the fundamental difference between our two protagonists. Yuta is attempting to design his way to strength by choosing to abandon only a single thread of attachment, his humanity, and expecting victory from that sacrifice, whilst Yuji forces his way to strength by abandoning everything and all attachments because there is simply no other choice. It is kill Sukuna or be killed by Sukuna, a primal decision that Yuji seems to have already made. Yuta thinks he has the ability to choose. Yuji knows that there was never any choice to begin with and must do what has to be done. He has a willingness to sacrifice because it is the only path to victory, and this is what Sukuna preaches and what the true definition of a monster in Jujutsu Kaisen really is. Not someone with a lack of humanity, but someone who knows that their humanity was never their currency to spend, just a neat veil obscuring the actions needed to win. A monster in Jujutsu Kaisen is someone who will do anything to win, something a title Gojo was never truly able to obtain despite the students' belief that he had. There are only two people in Jujutsu Kaisen with the conviction necessary to be monsters. One is Ryomen Sukuna, and the other is Yuji Itadori, two faces of the same spectre. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you liked the video. I much prefer these narration type videos since they are much easier to make, and lets me get out more videos for people to listen to. If you want more videos like this, then pop down to the comments and let me hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your ideas or disagreements. Thank you all for watching, and peace be with you.